Hey guys, this week we are talking with Chris Leak. Chris is a pastor out in North Carolina, and he is an avid outdoorsman. And I don't know about you, but some of my most spiritual moments that I've had in my life have happened in the outdoors. When you get away from everything, when you um, encounter God's creation in a powerful way, with whether it be the ocean or the mountains or just a quiet night in the woods, whatever it may be. Those are some of the most spiritual moments I've had in my life, and I suspect I suspect that is true for some of you all as well. And so that's what we're talking about today with Chris. He's an avid outdoorsman, a hunter, a fisherman, hiker, all sorts of things, and he's got a lot of experience in the outdoors, and he's just an all-around great guy. And so that's who we're talking to today. I hope you guys enjoy. Talk to you later. All right, guys, we are here with OnPoint Quarantine Edition, our new interview series, and we are talking with Chris Leak. Chris is a pastor out in North Carolina. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey everyone, and like Herschel said, my name is Chris Leak. Herschel and I have known each other since our time together at Asbury Theological.
It's been it's almost 14 years
since we met. Yeah, you know, and you graduated because it was a shorter. What's the word I'm looking for? Your studies weren't as long as the Master's of Divinity. Your degree.
No, it was a year shorter than yours. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were in 2009. I graduated in 2010. I have been in Eastern North Carolina ever since as a pastor in the United Methodist Church. I'm now on my third appointment, and it's my first multi-charge appointment. So I have two churches instead of just one.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I started out as an associate in Washington, was there for 5 years. Then I was the sole pastor of Rose Hill United Methodist Church and in Rose Hill, North Carolina. And now I'm in Newton Grove, North Carolina, and I have two churches. I have a church downtown and a church out in the country, and both are relatively smaller congregations. And but no, it's good. It's a real slice of life out here in Eastern North Carolina. This kind of has all of that down for us.
So do you go to one church first and then the other one, or do you do every other week, or?
No, so we're 5 miles apart. Our churches are. So we do 9:30 for our first service at the church in town, and which is Newton Grove United Methodist Church. And then I drive 5 miles out and start at 11 o'clock. So we have a 30-minute window where, I get from one church to the next. The pros are I get to worship very similarly, but with very different kind of congregations. And so there's a real different feel between the two, which is great. I love it. Music's a little different. Things of that nature is great, but it's also some cons. Like I don't get to do not Bible studies. I get to do Bible studies. I don't get to do Sunday school classes with either one because they're doing it in the hour that the others having this main service. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. It's awesome. It's good to talk to you again. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, this is for our men's ministry here at Brentwood United Methodist Church. And I was wanting to talk to guys who are kind of into, I'm sorry, looking down, I'm looking at my notes here. I want to talk to guys who are into different kind of different hobbies or whatnot. And one of the things that I remembered about you and I loved about you is you were so into the outdoors, fishing, hiking, that type of stuff. So can you tell me what it is about the outdoors that you love and what kind of stuff you love to do outside?
Yeah. So I think my draw to the outdoors was having grown up doing things like hunting, fishing, golfing with my dad and my brother.
Yeah.
So for me, outdoors is relational. And one of the reasons that God speaks so well to me, my connection's unstable. It's one of the reasons why God has been so big to me in nature is because God is relational. And I think one of the ways he speaks is through his creation. And I think that's true for all of us. There's a verse out of Romans chapter 1:20. It says that it should be evident to all people because God has been speaking and revealing himself through his creation. So certainly true for me too. So, as the relationship I've had with my family, doing hunting, fishing, with friends, doing hiking, camping, things of that nature. So I find God strengthening even when I'm by myself in nature. And so when I'm outside, when I'm beholding creation, in fact, the farther I get away from man-made creation, when I get away from streets, buildings, sounds that reflect our creation, then I feel like I get to listen to what God's saying just through the way nature moves, acts, breathes.
Yeah,
It's very connectional, and relational is the word for me.
that's yeah. You said we were back in seminary together, and I remember we took that camping trip. We went to
Oh
the
yeah,
Smoky Mountains, and we went
it was
whitewater
great.
rafting and hiking and all that stuff. And I feel like that was at the end of our first year. And when we
Hmm.
were starting, you had just invited me into the small group. You all had been meeting for a month or so before, and I remember that was like I felt like what solidified our group um, was going on that trip together, getting outside and doing some real fun adventure type stuff together.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
go
yeah,
ahead.
that was great for many reasons. I mean, it's not the most outdoorsy hiking, camping. It was fairly laid back in that sense, but we got to experience mountains, we got to experience rivers, we got to experience cold water, and
Yep.
we got to experience campfires and cooking and doing fun things like that. So we bonded a lot. I thought that was, like you said, that's what solidified small group for us. Is we met each other, and we wrestled with each other, and we wrestled a little bit with God and His call in our lives at that point too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It, I, for me, and this is one of the things I love about the outdoors is it was, we had just finished up our first year of seminary. We all of us, I think, were probably drained mentally from all the work because it's a lot harder than people tell you it's going to be, especially that first year when
Mhm.
you're just getting used to it. And from it was just a way to recharge our batteries a little bit, and to talk, like you said, talk about our callings, because all of us, I think, we're called to different things and are doing
Mhm.
different things now. Um, so I just really love that about it.
Yeah.
Um, you also, when we were at seminary, you worked in the national parks, doing ministry in the national parks. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what the organization was, what you did, where you were?
Yeah, it's a fantastic group. And so a Christian ministry in the national parks is shortened down to ACMNP.
Mm-hmm.
And every year they recruit through fall and through the earliest parts of spring students from college campuses and their Christian communities, as well as seminary students, to go out into national parks and sign up to lead worship in the national parks. And you get a regular job working for the concessionaires within those parks. I work for the Grand Teton Lodge Company. Specifically, I worked at Coulter Bay Marina at Jackson Lake in Jackson. Well, so it's north of Jackson Hole. I was more in Moose Junction area of the national parks. But so every week, I would work a regular job down at the marina, renting boats, signing people up for lake cruises and the like. And then on Friday nights, we go, or Friday and Saturday nights, we go do campground calling, which is basically we walk the campgrounds, RV sites, and everything like that, telling people about just the different programs that the park had, as well as our worship services on Sunday morning.
Mm.
And so we'd tell them about the fireside chats that they would do at the amphitheaters with the park rangers and so forth. We'd tell them about any events going on in general. And then we would tell them, and if you want to come join us on a Sunday morning, we have worships at these same amphitheaters at these times. And so I was doing at Coulter Bay, we had 3 services. We had 2 in the morning and 1 in the evening. And so I would preach a sermon and lead a worship service with a few of the other people, volunteers for
Mm.
ACMNP. And we would do that 8, 10, and then 5 in the evening. So we were doing it 3 times a day. And then the rest of the week was work and hike and camp and have a blast. And it was incredible. So,
Um, what do you think is like one of your most memorable experiences from that summer?
yeah. Oh, man. There's a lot, I guess. I'll speak to the nature aspect of it as well as the relational. So for me, one of the absolute most memorable times was we finished up worship on a Sunday evening, and we had gone on Saturday because the park ranger office was not open throughout all Sunday. But we went ahead of time and secured backcountry passes for camping, as well as got our little bear canister. You're out in the true wilderness there, and so you separate all your food and anything like toothpaste or deodorant or anything like that you might carry with you, because the animals smell it, and so you got to keep that stuff locked up and away from your campsite. But me and a handful of the volunteers, I think there were like 6 of us total. We got a secured site. That was about 1.5 miles off the main road, so really not having to go very far into the backcountry. And we got there. We got set up and everything. We got all of our tents and stuff, and it was still relatively early in the day, or I should say the night. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and so we had a campfire going and everything. But we looked up, and the clouds that had kind of been there parted, and our eyes had had time to adjust, and so we're seeing stars like we've never really seen before. And I think we just forget what that looks like, or don't have a clue because of all the light pollution of towns and cities and so forth. But in any case, so we took our sleeping bags instead of hanging out in the tents for the better part of the night. We took our sleeping bags, found a little grassy knoll, and laid out and just looked up. And I remember we would talk about just kind of what God was like to us and the miracles of nature itself. We talked about I still remember, thinking about the verses that, you read about Abraham, and Abram when he's being told by God that just as count the stars if you can. And so we're up there and we're not counting stars, we're counting satellites that you see go by. But the clarity of everything was just so amazing. And what was also neat is even though it's dark enough that you can see just tons and tons of stars, you don't lose even in the middle of the nights there, you don't lose the silhouettes of the trees and the mountains around you. So you have these huge mountains, not like unlike anything I've seen on the East Coast and eastern side of the United States. Our mountains just aren't quite the same. But over there, man, you'd have this big silhouette backdrops of Mount Moran and the Three Tetons and Tiwanaut and just all these different things. But you'd see the stars above them and shooting stars, and you'd see satellites go by and all those things. And it was just, if you didn't say anything, it was super silent. And if you spoke, it wasn't like it was breaking that silence all that much either. So I definitely just remember that. And then maybe the other thing, that was just great because relationally we were able to sit there with a handful of people. The other really key thing for me when I was there actually happened when I was by myself. And it was, I went hiking and I picked knowing I was going by myself, I picked a relatively well-traveled trail and just to try and be smarter about things. And, but anyway, just how fast things change in the wild, in nature. And so it gave me an idea of just how powerful God's creation can be. And it shows me a little bit better the size of God. You can get lost looking at stars, but you can feel stuff when you're in the middle of a storm. So anyway, I go hiking up the mountain, headed for Surprise Lake. And anyway, going up, it was 80 degrees when I started. I decided that it was so nice, I wasn't even going to bother to pack out much more than water. So I had a t-shirt to change into so that when I sweated, I was done with that. And that was it. I didn't pack a rain suit or anything like that, a rain jacket, which I normally would carry. And so clouds come in, temperature drops, wind picks up, there's some rain. I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. It passes pretty quick. I'm like, great, I'll keep going. And I'm not soaking wet. And then it gets dark, not cloudy, not cold. It gets dark. And all of a sudden wind's howling and it's not rain falling, but hail. And I'm going, oh no. And so I found my way off of the beaten path and found like this little rock ledge that kind of hovered over. And so I was able to shelter under that as full-blown storm passed through, like lightning, rain, wind, hail, all of it. And, the funny thing is having grown up in lower country for sure, altitude's very different. So it's already cooled off just because you're already 6,000 feet at the base. And I was about halfway up. So I was about 8.5, 9,000 feet up. And so when a storm came in there, you're not just on a mountain, you're in the storm, the storm's right there. And so I was just remember kind of being like, this is way different. I love sitting through thunderstorms in the summertime here in North Carolina, sit on the porch, just watch them fly over whatever. This was scary. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just like, wow, man, this is crazy. And as quickly as it came, it went. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to keep going because I was a dummy. And, you think, oh, well, nothing bad's happened yet, so I'll keep
Right.
going. So I kept going, and I actually got to the lakes and decided I wanted to get a picture of the lakes from higher up. So I kept climbing higher. And I got hold of a rock, and it looked like I was just going to step up on it and go to the next rock higher. And when I pulled myself up to that one, I was looking down at like this 400-foot fall to the canyon on the other side. I was actually on the very ridge, and you didn't know it. I mean, you could easily have just messed up. And so I was like, well, okay, I just,
Yeah.
the land changed. And so then I look across that canyon up to the middle Tetons, which is the next mountain range over, or next mountain. And I see, I'm like, well, that's a strange looking cloud. And I said, it's kind of no, that's not a cloud. It was snow being blown my way. So
Oh my
I've gone
gosh.
through rain, I've gone through hail, and then snow hit. And I was actually
Almost
like,
falling off
this
a
is kind
cliff.
of crazy. And then snow turned to sleet. And so I just again had to climb kind of back down from the rocks I was on, hunker down a little bit, and just wait for that stuff to pass. And I just remember thinking, all right, God, I've been stupid long enough here. I'm amazed that in one day, in less than 3 hours time, I've gone through every form of precipitation, mist, fog, rain, hail, sleet, and snow, every bit of it. And the temperature was so vastly different. Like it went from 80 and sunshiny to, oh, I don't know, 40, 45. I could see my breath. I was shivering. And it was just, I left with a whole new respect for the beauty of outdoor life,
Yeah.
and the raw power of it. And, for me, the word that comes to mind, as often does in nature, is majesty.
I was just about to
The,
say that. I was just about to say,
yeah,
talking about majesty.
I mean, yeah, the Tetons are an incredible place, and any mountain range is fairly incredible to me. And oceans are amazing too, for the size and scope and
Mm.
power of it. But for me, it was just majestic, and
Yeah.
I saw God's majesty in the strength of it. Also, um, I felt not like I was in any real particular danger at any point. I was always pretty smart about how I traveled. I've always done outdoors and hiking, camping, stuff like that. And I made preparations for if anything should happen to me in terms of like what I was wearing, where I started, what my
Mm-hmm.
plans were, and I didn't deviate from those things. So I left all that stuff for people to find down where I parked. And so I tried to stay pretty smart about it. And it still felt like God was going, okay, you've been a dummy,
Yeah.
but let's
Yeah.
get you, let's be smart. And so I felt like God watched out for me a little bit too, and let me just kind of see some of that stuff. So I definitely felt like, not that I just escaped some harrowing thing. It really wasn't all that super scary, other than the lightning storm all around, popping all around me, and hail flying everywhere. But it definitely was just a wake up to just how quickly things change and what that change looks like.
Well,
And yeah.
I think one thing that, I love that you said majesty, because I was thinking that exact thing while you were talking, is sometimes we forget that, like, there's, that phrase in the Bible over and over again, fear of the Lord also, like not that we should be scared, but like these things that he has created are just so much bigger than we are, and so much more powerful than we are. I remember the first time I ever saw the Rocky Mountains was only 2 years ago. I went out to Colorado with Lee, and we went out to Pikes Peak, which is like the most touristy mountain you can go to, and yet you get up there and you're standing there and you look out, and it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. Number one. And number two, I'm scared to death because I can barely breathe because you're up so high.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just you try to hike up a little bit from where you park and everything, and yet you still, like, you can't, because the air is so thin up there, and it's terrifying to me, but it's also like one of the most awesome, majestic things to me, because it's like God has created this thing that's so much bigger than we could ever imagine. The other time I remember this feeling was I was in Florida and I was sitting on the beach, and it was right after those tsunamis hit back in 2005, and they killed hundreds of thousands of people over in Asia.
Hmm.
And I'm just sitting there, sitting on the beach, just looking at the ocean, and it's so calm and so peaceful. And I was like, this is so amazing, and yet it's so powerful that it just wiped out generations of people. Like, and just to sit there and just take that in, I feel like widens our scope of God, but without us even knowing it sometimes.
Yeah. So I feel like for me, when I read through like scripture, and the reason why I feel like God speaks to me on a big level in nature is that nature is his response, his creation, and his relationship
Mm,
with earth and with its creatures that he's made is his response to Job's indignation. So if you read through the book of Job, and Job, poor guy, has lost everything. He's lost his health, he's lost a lot of his family. His wife's turned on him, and even his best friends who come to console him only blame him, because why would God allow anything like the
right.
stuff he goes through? And so in that indignation, he goes, "What's up, God? Why are you doing this to me?" And God's response, read through it, chapter 38, 39, 40, he just lays it out there. It's like, um, do you know the mountains, and when their goats give birth, are you there for that? And have you considered the Leviathan of the ocean's deep, and all
Mm,
these things? And I mean, he just walks Job through the amount of thought and detail, and
yep.
even that relationship. These animals respond to him. He calls to them. They move upon his command, and and in their majesty, he was there from the foundations of the earth. He set them. He's asking Job, where were you there? I mean, can you
Mm,
tell me who set the foundations, and can
yep.
you tell me who set things in motion and all that stuff? And all Job can say is, I see. And for me, it was reading that. I know that's a response to Job, and it shows Job where his place is. But I've always felt like that's what nature did for me. It puts me in my place,
Mm,
knowing that, and I will fast forward that to the Gospels. When I was younger, outdoors were an escape for me, because school and relationships with people weren't easy for me. And I wasn't always very outgoing. I was very selfish and very centered upon my own problems and that sort of thing. And I would just kind of put walls up and shield myself away from people rather than get to know them. And so outdoors became an escape. And so I hear verses of like, you know, if God so clothes the lilies of the valley, which are here today and gone
hmm
tomorrow, will he not also take
Yep.
care of you? That sort of a thing. And so when I was outside, especially in the tea times, but even when I'm fishing or hunting, and seeing a sunrise or a sunset, when I'm seeing nature in, unadulterated form, just being as God made it, I'm seeing the meticulous detail that he's put into these creations. Nothing prettier to me than a wood duck. Just the colors they have, the way their feathers, the way they call to each other when they're roosting on the water. Nothing quite as magnificent as the purple and pink skies after a storm during a
Yep.
sunset. And so I see the detail God has placed into his creation. And when you read from Genesis, where you have the creation of earth and all of its things, and then as the ultimate creation is the people, you think, oh, I don't see the same beauty in myself, but God does. And so that helped me have a different image of myself, was going that what I see in me and all of my brokenness and sinfulness, God sees something great. And he's just as proud, and maybe even more so, of his creation and his people, despite broken and sinful they may be. He's so proud of them, and I think he's put the most glory in his people. And so when I see the glory of God in the outdoors, when I see the detail and the attention, when I know the relationship as I read through scriptures, man, it really helps me connect to God and go, he cares this much and more for me.
That's
And that solidifies it for me, man. So like when I forget that, outdoors is where I'm reminded of that. When I quit living that reality, and when I doubt myself and things like that, like I go on these pilgrimages, man. I gotta go for a walk. I gotta go for a hike. I gotta go and just spend some time away from man-made images and and buildings and noises and things like that. So I can hear God say, look how much I love what I've made. Don't you know I love you just as much and more?
Did you
So
know you were going to be
nature's been
preaching today?
no, man. When you told me what we were talking about, I just thought, what do I love the most, and why do I love that?
Yeah.
And that's it. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that.
No, I
So
think that's beautiful. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. I do have a couple lightning round questions if you're interested, if you have time. Uh, you're ready to get into this. These questions are
let's
of
go.
little to no importance. I'd say very little importance.
Okay.
Um,
Am I supposed to answer these as fast as possible? Lightning
yes,
round. Okay.
yes. Lightning being fast. Think fast. Lightning round.
Flash.
Okay, you ready? Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. Number one, biggest fish you've ever caught.
I'm gonna say 8.5 pound striped bass
Okay.
out of Roanoke River.
Okay. The best book you've read in the last year.
Best book I've read in the last year. Oh, that's hard because I've been reading some good ones. Last year, though, I read Grace to Lead by Brene Brown. Really
Oh yeah,
eye-opening in terms of how we connect to people and things like that, but really speaking towards like how shame works against us and how we can channel that. So that's been fantastic and helping me, be more productive as well as understand myself better.
love it. Favorite class from seminary.
Man, that's really tough. I personally I loved ethics, so I think
Dr. Thobaben.
Dr. Thobaben, yeah, and I went to the church where he and a few others were pastor too, so I probably would be preference to one of his classes. We did, not surprised, man, his ethics class. We did creation and environment, and that was a fantastic class. So.
Love it. And the last question I have for this lightning round is, how much camo do you own?
Uh, Not as much as you might think. I remember you laughed at me because I got a new camo jacket when I was in seminary, and I just was like wearing it up and down the halls like some redneck or something. And I don't know if you saw me drinking from my camo cup earlier.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, this question is perfect.
So no, man, I own just enough camo to do duck hunting, some waders, a jacket, a shirt to do dove hunting in, and I think I've got one more camo jacket that's heavier for colder weather. My brother gave me back when I would occasionally go deer hunting with him, but other than that, I have a few hats. I don't own tons of camo anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so my last question, real last question, is you have a little girl, a little baby. What do you want to instill in her about outdoor life as she grows up?
Oh man, like I guess for me, just as I was saying, for me, outdoors is relational.
Mm.
And so whether she takes up outdoors or anything else, singing anything indoors, whatever she may do, I believe God's made us in such a way that we're relational. And one of the things I think is beautiful about relationship is that in the image of God, I think we're given maybe one gift that's greater than all. In fact, that we're able to create things, so I can't go out and create earth, but I really enjoy creation. So I hope for her, whether it's outdoors or writing music or stories or designing, drawing, whatever it may be, that she connects to God in a relational, creative way.
Awesome.
And so for me, when I'm outdoors and when I take her outside and stuff like that in years to come, I'm going to try to really pass on the appreciation of creation and that relationship God has to us through creation. And if it's not outdoors, then I'm going to help her appreciate those creative talents that she might have, that we all have within us, because God's bestowed it upon all of us to be creative, and really help her maybe channel that relationship that God gives to us through those things. So if she likes fishing, man, I'll just be a blessed man and to carry her out there and let her enjoy that. But hopefully what I'll pass on is that God has created this beautiful place with all these beautiful animals and creatures, and we're created alongside of them but we're created with more glory than them. And God relates to us in a different way. So as much as he loves his creation and longs for its, renewal as well, he longs for us. So hopefully outdoors will be the same reminder to her of what God longs for us as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I know the guys will really enjoy it. Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right. We'll talk later.